let me jump into that, Brandon.
Yeah.
It's a great segue. It could be 50, 60, or more. It could be 100. If And that's the concept of transferable value. So one thing is valuation. And normally, if you call a business owner when they make a call, Tom, and they ask, "Oh, can you guys get me hooked and get going over the next half hour?" First
Yeah.
question I'm going to ask is, "Okay, how much you think your business is worth?" Then there's going to come 10 million.
All right,
Hey,
Tom, good to
everybody.
be with
Yeah.
you.
How are you, Alex? Today, I'm excited because I think we have Ninestone stat to scale, how should I say, historical moment. We have two guests. We usually have one. So
Two
we
for
usually have
one.
to play zone. Now we have to play man to man because we have two guests with us. And we are going to talk about specifically around this idea of exit planning. I see a lot of that. I don't know if it's generational. We have, boomers looking to move forward. It seems like tis the season not only for Christmas but for exit planning. And so I want to
Right?
go around and talk to my friends Brandon Moon and Rafael Pino. Gentlemen, welcome.
Yeah, good to be
Thank
with you
you.
all.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for
I
having
we
us.
I'm ultra excited. I know our people. This is the kind of stuff. And again, we are going to focus on this the stack to scale. We're going to get to know you. There's some stuff in the show notes, a little bit about you and your website, that kind of thing. So I don't spend a lot of time. I want to get right to the meat of the order here. So uh, I don't think that when you were 12 years old that you woke up and said, mommy, someday I'm going to be a successful exit planner. Gentlemen, how did you get to this? How did all of a sudden this is a thing that you landed on? Tell me a little bit about your journey. Brandon, we'll start with you.
Yeah, certainly appreciate the question. Thanks for having us. Excited about this conversation today. So my background started, like you said, not thinking that I was going to be an exit planner. In fact, I kind of always envisioned that I was going to join the family business. And so I went off and got an engineering degree, and then went and did an MBA. My goal was to eventually bring outside experience to scale our family business. My grandfather had started a temperature sensor manufacturer out of Houston in 1980. So my thought was, instead of joining it right out of high school, I'm gonna go get experience, maybe work for a potential customer, understand what the landscape looks like, and that's what I did. I worked in the chemical plants. I was a maintenance engineer, and then when I went into oil and gas consulting, got experience doing project management, resource allocation, all of that good stuff. And then got tired of the corporate life, and so eventually called my grandfather and said, "Hey, I think I'm ready." And I know you've talked about how you felt trapped in the
Yeah.
business, and so I'll help you retire. I'll take a 50% pay cut and come join the business. Are you ready? And he said, "That's great. Talk to the family first." So had the conversation with the family that hey, I'm coming here to grow the business, not to work in the business. Two different things.
Yep.
Everything was on, everybody was on board with that. And then I'll fast forward to the end. We bought two businesses. Both of them were fire sales essentially because there was no planning. And then my grandfather passed away. It took about 2 months for me to realize it was time to resign because we didn't have actual a succession plan.
Oh, man.
Um,
Yeah.
Mm.
all of the things that need to be put in place to make sure that the legacy is protected. And so I can give you all the horror stories of just the family dynamics, and like I said, it took 2 months for me to realize it was time to resign. So I took all of that knowledge, and hindsight is 2020 for sure. And so I said, you know what? There is a lot of businesses in America that are jobs. They're not assets. And unfortunately, life happens to all of us. 100% of business owners are going to exit their business someday. So how do you prepare for those type of events before it's too late? Whenever you have energy and that kind of stuff. So that's when I started the consulting business before I met Rafa. And then meeting Rafa was an absolute blessing because I had the boots on the ground experience. Basically scaled the business from I grew at 4x during my time there. just bootstrapping the growth, right? I mean, no investors, figuring out which markets we needed to be in, changing marketing, sales, depending on which verticals we were going into. And it was a hard growth because we were doing it, the whole mentality of looking in the bank account to see if we had money. We had money, great, we're going to invest. And there wasn't a financial strategy. And so when I met Rafa, it's like, wow, the financial piece is absolutely what should drive this. So that's my story.
Well, it's interesting. I think the summary of your story would be kind of scratch your own itch there. You've actually lived a little bit of it and saw the challenges. Rafa, you come from a different area, and it'd be interesting to see how you came about this.
Yeah, I'll start with the end there, Tom. You're gonna hear my story shortly, and exits have always been a big part of what I do. You're absolutely right. I didn't wake up someday, 11-year-old, saying I wanna be an exit planner. However, always worked with exits. But for me, there's a sense of purpose in this, in what we do, which is help the small and mid-sized business owner um, become a millionaire, multi-millionaire, ideally. That has a sense of purpose. That brings a sense of purpose, mission, and achievement for me that I did not find in the rest of my story. And when I met Brendan, it just all came together. It made sense to start working. We saw the opportunity. We saw the need. The need is there. And decided, let's do this. And it's amazing how fulfilling that can be. Now, back to my story and how do I get here? I basically worked with exits all my life. So I started in the banking world, um, doing exits, doing IPOs and valuing stocks and doing all that. Did that for about 13 years. At some
Wow.
point, I decided to move into private equity. Got an opportunity, worked in private equity for about 4 years. Uh, and private equity is all about exits. So it's all about planning for that exit, which is when private equity firm delivers on its mission and its promise to its clients, right? Its investors. Um, then progressed to a CFO role where an exit was absolutely important. In that case was give an exit to the banks. I love you guys, but for 5 years my job was to try and give you guys the boot, get you guys out of the balance sheet.
Thanks, Rafa.
Because, yeah, if I didn't do that, that company would be in dire straits, and it was in dire straits until we were able to turn it around. Amazing opportunity, especially with COVID in the middle of this. So you can imagine how fun it was running an over-levered business that sold to retailers. We're manufacturing, selling to retail, and retail is closed. And we're highly leveraged. So it was super fun, amazing. But anyway, survived all that and exits and the discipline and getting ready and getting the trajectory right to get where you need to be able to be successful in an exit is basically what I've done all my life. Um, and I didn't mention that I'm also an engineer. So uh, both me and Brennan love to nerd out about these things all the time. And you can imagine what two engineers do when they're in a room nerding out about stuff. And it involves numbers and spreadsheets and plans and ideas. Yeah, we decided to start working from separate offices because of that, because it was becoming highly unproductive.
That'll happen,
We like to
right?
avoid that. Um, I appreciate that, gentlemen. So as you know, we're all about scalability here, but we know that scalability moves into sellability. I don't even know if that's a word. So I was wondering if we can take that next step and talk about business characteristics, business owners, right? Because usually you guys, and again, we've worked a little bit together, right? So you guys get called in and it's like, basically, I think I'm describing this correctly. Somebody goes, "Hey, I want to sell. When can we sell? It's it's noon. Can you think we can get this done by 5?" right? And then, you guys come in with the story that says, well, how about, 5 in about 5 years, right? But there's pieces, right? There's pieces in there and kind of a trail that takes us from that scaling model, right, to that sellability. Can you give us a couple that journey?
Yeah. So, I'll jump in real quick. You mentioned about sellability. I think what we try to focus on is transferability. And the reason why is because an exit doesn't have to be a sell, right? It's the easiest conversation because everybody can understand it. But it might be preparing for the next generation in the succession plan. It might be a management buyout with the management team taking ownership. But regardless, the business will always have to be set up a certain way, and that way is not owner dependent. And there's so many businesses that are owner dependent,
Key.
and the business owner a lot of times don't even see a fault in that, right? Sometimes they wear the badge that I do everything and therefore it's a successful business. But there's a difference between a successful business and a significant business. The significant business is going to outlast the owner. And so that's what we try to instill is let's first decide or talk about how dependent of the business is on the owner and put that to a value, right? If it's 50% dependent on the owner, then whatever a discounted cash flow model tells you or whatever a market analysis tells you of what the multiple is going to be, discount that by 50%. And start putting that into a real tangible number.
That's
And
interesting.
it is Brandon, is that a real number? Are you seeing that if like companies that are founder led or dependent or owner dependent, you're discounting them 50%, or does it really depend on industry and all kinds of other things?
So
Let me jump into that, Brandon.
yeah,
It's a great segue. It could be 50, 60 or more. It could be 100. And that's the concept of transferable value. So one thing is valuation. And normally, if you call a business owner, when they make a call, Tom, and they ask, "Oh, can you guys get me hooked and get going over the next half hour?" First question I'm going to ask is, "Okay, how much you think your business is worth?" Then there's going to come $10 million, $20 million, right? Then I go, "Okay, if you had $20 million today and you are not doing what you're doing, would you buy your business for $20 million?" And then
Wow.
I normally hear pause.
You
Then my next
hear a
question,
pause.
then my next, then my next question to that is valuation is, or after establishing that valuation is what someone else is willing to pay to take on the business. It's not what you think it's worth,
Yeah.
right? Then we go, okay, how much of that $10 million value is dependent on you? Oh, all of it. Okay, you're worth zero. Because
Yeah.
Oh,
that's the concept of transferable value. Now, let's assume for a moment that $10 million is a fair valuation within the realms of being reasonable and investable from an investment perspective, okay? Because that market trades for a multiple of 5 times, and this guy has really a good business, and it's worth $10 million. Okay, yeah, but that comes from that multiple is based off the premise that A, it is scalable and will keep on growing, and B, not dependent on the owner. Now, if it's 100% dependent on the owner, that valuation is 10 million, but the actual value, the transferable value, is zero. Now, our job is normally after the noon call, come up with a pathway to closing that gap. So,
yeah.
and then walk that journey together. And that involves scaling, Tom, because 9 out of 10 times, 10 million is not the real value. The real value is actually 5. And the dependency is 60%, which gives you a 3 actual
Right.
value.
Yeah.
But that first number, the 10 number, normally comes from that's what I need to retire.
Yeah.
And I say, fine, that's what you need. We're going to get you there. But it involves scaling. It involves getting to another level. It involves removing that owner dependency. It involves having the systems, processes, the SOPs, the structure,
management team,
the management team, and then we got checking those boxes. Now, and I could go on and on. Any diligence list is 250 items, and no one is going to come up with those items the next morning, right? If they would, they wouldn't be calling us. Correct. So all this to say, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's about putting that work, because you cannot work those things out like that overnight. If they did that, they would be completely overwhelmed. So that's why they got to pace themselves, put a plan together, and work it out in steps, you know?
And I guess 2 points that I wanted to add real quick on that. Alex, you mentioned, is that the discount that we would put on a founder-led business? No, it's how dependent the owner is. And so it doesn't matter if it's a founder-led business, if it's it doesn't matter what kind of business it is. It matters on, do you have the systems so that owner, you can take a 6-month vacation, and not only does the business survive, it thrives. And if it doesn't thrive, then it's still dependent on you, and there has to be some kind of discount on that.
So and that's a really great point about, like, it doesn't matter if it's founder led or how you got there. It's where you're at today, and the removing that owner dependency, as you say. Right? I took some awesome notes. You know, we're in the marketing and sales system business at Ninestone. How important is that when you talk about systems? Like, I'm curious from your perspective. I think it's pretty important, but do most companies have this in, like, are they, I guess, how important is marketing and sales, and are most companies kind of ready to sail? Do you ever come into companies that are just ready to go right away, or most of them really need some work?
Can I go here?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Sure. Absolutely.
You guys are business owners as well. When you start your business, what's the first thing you do as a business owner?
Yes. Sell your stuff.
You become a
pray,
salesman, right?
Mortgage your house.
Pray. Ask my wife for forgiveness.
Guess what? What do they keep doing forever? Selling their stuff. Yep. So normally, the biggest salesman of a company in this demographic, in this business size, they are the big salesman, right? They are the big. They might have evolved into a role where they manage a sales team, but they're still that manager. They're still the spearhead of the top line, right?
You're saying the owner is the rainmaker, right? Yeah. They're like one of the key rainmakers, making the money, selling the stuff.
Yeah. So he's normally that person. If he's not 100% of their time, that person, there's a significant amount of their time where they are that person. And that's where guys like you come in, right? We got to remove him from that. Going back to Brandon, we got to make sure there's a team that works independently. I'm not saying there's not an ownership level where the owner makes some big decisions and from time to time, uses checks and balances to make sure things are progressing the right way. That's called management, and that's all right if they do that. But the actual running day to day, picking the phone, it's not done. It should not be done. That's the first thing. Hey, you should be talking to guys like Ninestone. You should be putting the systems together, because if you're still doing that after a certain level of revenue, you're not doing yourself a favor at all when it comes to having those options. Because I'll go back to another point here. An exit doesn't need to be a sale, right? Yeah. And if you build a company like this, like we're describing, your kids will want to have it. You might want to go to that beach and get mailbox money and drink daiquiris every day because you now have a business that works. And your exit could be being on the beach. I don't know. We'll get there. But I think you guys get the point.
But and I guess this goes back to that second point earlier, is that there has to be growth, right? There has to be predictable growth. And if you set up your business with that mindset, even if you don't ever want to sell, I never want to sell, I'm never going to relinquish control. That's fantastic. But your business has to be a self-sustained entity. And that means it needs to have sales. It needs to have a means of getting the word out and expressing what your values are and what your mission is, so that people can gravitate towards you and start buying your product or your service or whatever that is. But if you don't have a way of communicating that, and you're just relying on the people who know and trust you and your repeat customer base without trying to grow that customer base, there's going to be attrition. It's going to eventually get to a point where people retire, people leave companies, and you start to lose the customer base that you have. And I don't care if they've been with you for 30 years. Someday, because life happens to us, at some point, that attrition is going to take toll. And whether it's 3% a year, 5% a year, whatever that is, if you don't try to fill your pipeline and fill your throughput back up, you're going to lose in the long run.
I want to take a small pivot here and kind of challenge you guys. I'm sitting here listening, and something you said earlier about this idea of having sort of a financial viable view of the business. And yet, we've now been at this for about 20 minutes. We really haven't talked about that, right? We've really talked about a couple things. Talked about sort of this owner mindset, this and I'm going to put people some words out there, right? This owner identity, right? That comes with it, that somehow you have to separate it. I get it that the numbers have to be foundational because you're going to bring people in and show them that this is a viable business. But that seems to be the easy part. The hard part seems to be this human factor of it. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about the title exit planner. Because, and then you turn around, Brandon, and you said, no, Tom, it's really about transferability. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But
Yeah.
you're marketing yourself, right? Because that individual's exiting, right? Now you are planning that could be a sale, could be a transfer, could be all these other things. So you're not transferability planners, if that's a thing, that's a word. So what I want to talk about is this founder-led mindset, this human aspect that you have to break that identity bond to the business, right? I mean, you guys are engineers, you got numbers, but I have to assume that that's the challenge that you guys are faced.
Yeah. To that point, frankly, we position ourselves as value advisors. And the reason why is because as soon as we say exit, it elicits a thought into the owner that, no, that's not going to happen to me, or I'm not ready for that, or I'm not thinking about that. And look, part of the reason why we've positioned ourselves to help the businesses in the way that we are trying to help them is because of the experiences that I have, right? Is that the two businesses that I bought were fire sales because owner passed away. In one case, the son was fulfilling orders at night because he didn't want the legacy to die on him, but he had a great life otherwise. He was an operations manager at a very large company, and so at night he would go in and try to fulfill orders. We had a 2-year backlog on our products, and so
Wow.
2 years. Like I had it on my calendar to call him once a month saying, "Hey, where's my shipment? Where's my shipment?" And then he stopped answering the phone and it was voicemail full. And so I bought a plane ticket, flew to Connecticut, and went to go knock on the door and say, "Where's my shipment?" And then I heard the story. His father passed away, and he wasn't telling his customers because he didn't want to break that news. And so that's one of those things where it doesn't have to be that way. If you, when you're healthy, if you think about what the future looks like without you, you can start to prepare that business any way that you see fit, and you protect that legacy for your kids, for the family, all of those things. Essentially, we paid pennies. Basically, he scrapped all of the equipment. He liquidated the building, and we bought the intangibles for hardly anything. And if 5 years prior, they would have said, "Hey, this is how we're gonna transition, and we want to find a strategic buyer," even if they sold for less than what they thought, it would have been significantly more than what we bought the business for. And I bring that up again, not saying you have to sell your business. There's all kinds of different ways, and that's the thing that we want to position ourselves is we want to provide optionality to business owner. Unfortunately, in this whole industry of exit planning, nobody's come up with a better term about that, because look, exit all of a sudden elicits the thought of an insurance salesman, right? I'm healthy now, so why do I need to buy insurance? In fact, that's when you should buy insurance, whenever the cost of insurance is low because you're healthy. It's the same thing with exit planning, is you should actually be thinking about your business when it is healthy, about how you're going to sustain that health, sustain the growth, and capitalize on that growth while it's still high, as opposed waiting till it starts going down, and now you have to convince whatever that transfer is that they're willing to take this dying business instead of a thriving business.
Let me chip in there, and you hit the nail on the head, Tom. The human factor is way more powerful than any spreadsheet. The real job of a leader, any leader, and a business leader is still a leader, is to work itself out of a job. So
wow,
if you come in and you're not ready to do that, you are destroying the value, going back to value advising on your business. So that's the biggest piece of advice we can give to a business owner is have a strong management team that you prepare. Now, here's another contradictory thing that we face all the time. One of the very first things we hear, the objections from a business owner, especially when the conversation is around the sale, because a lot of the times it's about the sale. They'll go, okay, I want to sell, but one of my non-financial goals is make sure that my people are going to be treated well. My people, they're employees. I love the fact that they want to do that. I respect that a lot. However, there's no biggest disservice to his people or her people than not preparing them. They're not giving them the reins and preparing them by removing yourself from the day to day. Because when I hear I want to protect my people, I got to take a pragmatic investor-like approach. That's my job in all of this, step in the shoes of the investor and have the hard conversations with the business owner. I'm going to tell them you're not making them any service by not training them, and then hoping and asking as almost like a favor to this potential buyer. You got to protect and keep these guys here. But this guy is an investor. He's coming looking at a return. He's coming and looking at growing a business at that potential. And if you don't equip your people with the right tools, the investor is going to come in and unfortunately, they're going to fire the people because they're looking for that return, right? So I hope I made a point here. That people aspect is by far the most important. Yep, Brendan.
I'll give you another example. So one of the other companies that I've seen firsthand this happened, the structure was 50%, 50%. 50% was for an inside sales order taker person, and the other 50% was a married couple. In COVID, the husband passed away. So now it's 50-50 with a widow and inside sales order taker. Or inside sales order taker had been there for 40 years. The widow refused to train her daughter on how to take over, and the daughter was in the business, but she didn't want to hand over the accounting stuff, the data that they felt was secure, right? You know, they didn't want to hand that off. She died unexpectedly, and
oh my gosh,
that was in 2022, something like that. And so now the amount of frustration between daughter and the 50% inside salesperson was unbelievable. And so, like, that's those things that it could have been at least mitigated or reduced if somebody is willing to at least train that next person. but so many business owners think that they're irreplaceable, which is it's absolutely true. Nobody will ever be able to do what you do, how you do it. But somebody else can come in and do what needs to be done. And that is what you need to be thinking about is to Rafa's point, you need to be thinking about this as how would I replace myself? So when I grew the family business, I actually moved 4 hours away and ran it remotely for 10 months because my intention was always to grow the business so it didn't need me. And eventually I hired a COO to replace me so I could think about where the business was going strategically, all of those things. And so you as a leader, you are doing your team a disservice if you're not thinking about the future without you.
And sorry to go cliche here, guys, but the reality is business owner should think as a shareholder. You should be working on the business, not in the business. I mean, there's a reason why this has been said over and over and over again. There's a reason, right?
That was the last 5 minutes has been fascinating in that piece because I don't know if it sounds to me like you're almost underselling yourselves, guys, because right there's this built-in thing about exit or transferability, but there's this I don't know what you call it, this lifestyle or this all of this stress, especially Brandon, that story you told is just heartbreaking that arguably could have been avoided just in general, like forget exit or anything, right? That whole idea could have been avoided completely if they were thinking about sort of this sustainability is the kind of the terminology that I'm thinking about, this ability to be able to walk away, take a couple weeks off and know that everything's going to be fine. So I want to be respectful of our listeners and your time. We've laid out a bunch of interesting topics, and I could see and I didn't foresee so many places we could go with this conversation, but I want to start bringing it home. Okay, so we've laid out a lot of the problems, a lot of the challenges. There's people out there listening to this. There are founders listening to this right now. What do I need to do? Give me the 3 to 5 big bulleted checklists that I need to start thinking about, regardless where I am in my journey as an owner founder. What do I need to do first, and so on?
So, I would honestly say first thing to do, go to our website. We have an assessment on there that is an exit readiness assessment. We also have a value driver assessment, which if you're, let's say that you're in your 30s and you just started your business and you're not thinking about exiting, I get it. At least do the value driver assessment. But
what's
the exit
website?
readiness,
What's the website, Brandon? Real quick.
tdpineadvisors.com.
T is in Tom, D is in David, pineadvisors.com. You got it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So the reason why I would recommend starting with that is because the questions that it asks in that assessment are questions that you wouldn't normally be thinking about, but yet need to be thought about when you essentially started the business. Like, just like if you're going to leave your house and you're going to go on a journey, you want to know where you're going and how to get back. So many business owners, they start the plan to grow a business, and then there's never an understanding of where am I heading, and then how am I actually going to, get home. So do you just stay out in the woods, or do you actually map it back, right? And that's what the exit readiness is doing is how do you actually get to go spend time with your family after all of this hard work? How do you monetize what all the hard work that you've done and take advantage of that? So I would start with the exit readiness, and then be open to speaking to people who are in this field, and whether it's us or not, it doesn't really matter. But selling your business or exiting out of your business is significantly different than running your business. And so just because you've grown a business and because you feel like you are in a really good place of where your business is at, unwinding from that business is a very different thing. And so be open to that. And one of the fallacies that I see and I always try to speak to is don't let pride stop you from doing those things, because a business owner a lot of times are prideful, thinking that nobody else is going to be able to help them. And you have great skill sets. You've actually, you've shown that you can be successful in those things, but being really successful is knowing when to lean on somebody else.
Wow. Yeah.
Man.
Wow. I feel like, man, I'm just taking notes. I feel like every one of these is a life lesson for me. And then I'm going to go tell my kids who are in high school and junior high, hey, I feel like I need to make a poster for my office. It's like, awesome.
This is heavy and good in that sense, right? Because there's an aspect. I mean, we're all business owners, right? It's just and to think that someone can do what I could do it better. Oh, I don't know about that, Brandon. But I get it. I absolutely get it. Rafa, what are your thoughts again as to how do I move forward?
I would add, Brendan said the first step, take that assessment, start thinking about these questions. I would add the next two steps. One, do evaluation, do a business valuation, and be ready to be surprised. Go ask someone that knows what they're talking about. Doesn't need to be us, just anyone that is in this realm, financial advisors that are skillful around valuation, and ask for their honest opinion about the business value. You're probably going to be surprised. And here's the thing, 99% of Americans own some form of stock. They can know any moment, just flip of their phones, how much their portfolio is worth.
Amen. Yeah.
But they run a business for 20 years without asking themselves the question, how much my business is really worth. So that's a baseline. Don't be discouraged by the fact that that number is going to surprise you. Take that as a starting point and a baseline to get to work. And then do another thing to protect your value. And that's page 1 of the manual of an exit advisor. Do a business continuity plan. That's page 1. That's the first thing that I learned from Brandon as I stepped into this business, and he recommends it to everybody. Have somewhere a place where you have the bank accounts, the passwords, the everything that someone needs to know should not be present here tomorrow. That's a very easy to put together document. And there's people that are skilled to ask all the questions that you need, because there are some of those that you want readily. Oh, yeah, I also need that. I forgot I needed that. So anyway, there's a list of questions you can ask, and you can put in that document. Make sure you hand it to a couple people you trust, because you never know if one of those people are going to be with you in a life-changing event. So have it a copy to at least 2 people, if not 3 people that you trust a lot, so they can carry on in a potential absence. I mean, if you do
Rafael,
that, you are protecting
keep going.
of what you got, that initial valuation. That's protected. That's the insurance you're buying for that initial value. Going back to Brendan's story. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
No. I love it. It's very important to do a trust, right? At some point, have a will and a trust for my family.
That's what I was
thinking.
Yeah.
People talk about trust all the time. I think, at least in the world of, as you have kids and things like this. But how many people are like, have a business continuity plan, right? That might be the first time I've heard it in ever. And dude, I need one of those, right? Tom, do you have the trust for the business? Probably not.
I'm waiting. Let me take a look around. No, I don't see any right.
I know a guy.
Yeah.
I know a guy. All right. I know 2 guys.
Yeah. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
No, you'll hear from me in like 8 minutes.
Look, gentlemen, this is an absolute. I got to tell you, I'm honestly pleasantly surprised on the level of depth and ideas about this whole subject. I feel enlightened and yet stupid at the same time. It seems like I should have known some of this. But if I feel like that, there's probably other people as well. As we start wrapping this up again, continue. You gave us the website. I'm sure you're available out on LinkedIn. They can find you. Again, we'll have a lot of this stuff in the show notes as well. Alex, Rafa, Brandon, last thoughts as we start heading home.
Yeah, Tom, I want to jump in there and just share a few of the like notes that I made,
That'd be
right?
great,
That
yeah.
were like, you focus on transferability. I love that word like that idea of transferability, not just exit planning. It's
Yeah.
transferring. We will transfer our business somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a successful business is different than a significant business. I've never heard it put that way. Like, wow, mind blown on that one. I got to think about, like, what is a significant business? I love how you said the real job of a leader is to work yourself out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that is hard for me to keep front of mind, right? Because a lot of leaders that I talk to, and often the way I feel is that if I'm out of a job, that's the scary thing. What would I do? I don't know. What would I do with myself, right? Even if I'm retired.
And adding to that, Alex, just really quick as you go through this, it's like the identity component of this is so
Yeah.
big as I put myself in that situation.
Yeah, and related to that, you said there's no bigger disservice. Rafa, you said this, no bigger disservice to my people than not preparing them for that transfer.
Amen.
Never thought about it from that perspective either, right? And then last, this idea of having a business continuity plan. I think it's like having a will and a trust for my business, right? That actually is insurance for my business. Never thought about it from that perspective. I thought about paying for insurance for my business.
That's right. Yeah.
I love it.
No, it's and I guess just to jump in real quick is don't hesitate to reach out, right? We're two normal guys on LinkedIn. If there's any questions, if there's any comments or concerns of where you are in your business, don't hesitate to reach out and get some advice.
Yeah. You all have done a great job of creating value for clients. So even I think like a successful business, like when you do these things up front or with you all, we've seen it as we've seen you work with your clients. The business becomes more valuable, whether someone wants to transfer or not, right? But the business will become more valuable, and people will be happier in that type of business.
Yep.
And I would drive it home, guys, with getting Brennan. You ended it perfectly. Get some advice. So transferring your business is something that you're going to do probably once in a lifetime. There's a reason why you come and you look for a real estate agent when you're selling one of the most valuable assets that you normally own. You need a specialist to do that. There are skills. There are things that are important, and as that event is unique, it doesn't make sense to have a specialist in house because it's not repeatable. So that's why you go ask for an advisor, especially because going back to emotions, the attachment to the business, the emotional attachment when we're discussing valuation and all the tough decisions and the tough conversations that happen throughout this process, you need someone that is detached from the business to be a strong piece of support and advice on your corner. Because buyers out there, especially professional buyers, guess what? They get all the advice they can get from attorneys, from CPAs, from all sorts of professionals and advisors that they get. Would you be alone? Doesn't make sense.
Wow, good advice, right? Takes a team.
Yes.
Takes
All
a team.
right, folks. Well, again, thank you so much, Brandon, Rafa. I really appreciate your time. I have a sneaking suspicion we should probably have a part 2 here because there's a lot of other unanswered questions. But again, thank you for your time. I look forward to a prosperous 2026.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you,
for
gentlemen.
having us.
Awesome.
Take care, everybody.
Right,
bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode. Click here for more great content to help you scale smarter. If this episode was valuable for you, share it with a friend and drop a comment below. And when you're ready to scale, visit us at ninestonepartners.com. Until next time, keep stacking, keep scaling.